Welcome to my new lecture. In this lecture, I would be discussing topic 40.10, 40.11 and 40.12 of the Fundamentals of Physics book by Halliday, Resnick and Walker. Topic 40.10 is X-rays and ordering of element. Then 40.11 is laser and laser light, and then I would move to topic 40.12, which is how lasers work. So first is topic 40.10 X-rays and ordering of elements. When a solid target such as copper or tungsten is bombarded with electrons whose kinetic energies are kilo electron volt range, electromagnetic radiations called X-rays are emitted. So we can say that X-rays are emitted when electrons with energies in kilo electron volt range are bombarded on a target such as copper or tungsten. X-rays have numerous uses in medical, dental and industrial fields, and the spectrum of X-rays is a continuous spectrum. You can see the figure 40.14 in the book, which shows a continuous spectrum produced by 35 kilo electron volt strike a molybdenum target, right? A continuous spectrum is formed in this case. Now we look at what is continuous X-rays spectrum. First, we consider an electron which strikes a target atom. Let's say this is electron with energy K naught, and it strikes a target atom. This is the target atom, and it loses some of energy in the form of photon, and this is, let's say, K minus delta K. That electron moves, and this is the energy delta K, which is released in the form of photon and given by delta K is equals to HF, and this is known as a X-ray photon. This scattered electron whose energy is now less than K naught, as delta K has been subtracted from it, may have a second collision with another target atom and may lose a second photon with a different photon energy. This electron scattering process can continue until the electron is approximately stationary. All the photons generated by these collisions form part of the continued X-ray spectrum. This strikes and the energy of the electron has been reduced. So if it strikes again a target atom, then more energy will be, and if this process continues, this photons scattering, then they form a continuous spectrum. There is a cutoff wavelength which is known as lambda minimum, and after below this lambda minimum, the continuous spectrum does not exist below this lambda minimum, right? So there would be no continuous spectrum below this lambda minimum. Now we want to find out this lambda minimum. To find this lambda minimum, we say that the electron strikes a target atom and loses all of its energy in the form of delta K. So the electron would be stationary after this point. So in this case, K naught would be equals to delta K, as it loses all of its energy, and we know that delta K is equals to Hf, where H is the Planck constant, and F could be written as C by lambda, and since we are talking about a minimum wavelength, this would be lambda minimum, and we can find out this minimum wavelength using the given relation as Hc by K naught. This would be the cutoff wavelength below which the continuous spectrum does not exist. Now we look at the characteristics X-ray spectrum. Characteristic X-ray spectrum. If we look at the electron striking or X-ray striking the molybdenum, then we have wavelength along this axis, and it has been given by 30, 40, 50, 60, and their relative intensity along this axis is the relative intensity, and the continuous spectrum is given like this. So this would be our lambda minimum. This point would be our lambda minimum. This is a continuous spectrum, and these are known as K beta lines, and the larger peak is known as K alpha line. In this section we will see how such a continuous spectrum is formed. So by such a characteristic X-ray spectrum is formed, these peaks arise due to two reasons. The peaks arise due to two reasons. First reason is that when an energetic electron strikes an atom in the target while it is being scattered, the incident electron knocks out one of the atom's deep lying electrons. If the deep lying electron is in the first shell, that a hole is created. Say electron, energetic electron, which is striking may knock out an electron which is deep lying in an atom, just thus creating a vacancy which is known as hole. Now if we suppose that this vacancy is created in n is equals to 1, that is the K shell, then now this is a vacancy of electron, and an electron from higher shell, which is at higher, suppose this is my n1 K shell, it could be n is equal to 2 L shell, or n is equal to 3 any shell, from shell higher may fill this vacancy, right? And when it fills this vacancy, it emits a photon, right? Now when it takes place from second to first shell, the emitted photon will be form K alpha lines, right, or K alpha line. And suppose it comes from third shell into first shell to fill this vacancy, this would be known as K beta lines, or it could be n is equals to 4 and it could go on, but there are more chances of K alpha and K beta line. So the hole which would be left in second or third shell will be filled by an electron from still further out of the atom. From suppose if it moves from second to first shell, there would be a hole created in second shell, and electron from third shell or fourth shell may take this hole in second shell, and this process continues of forming characteristic X-ray spectrum. We can see these changes tracked in a energy diagram. Suppose I have energy in kilo electron volt along this axis, and I have a hole which is created in ground state. Now this zero level represents the ground state, and this 20 kilo electron volt represents the K shell, n is equals to 1, and this 2.7 electron volt represents n is equal to 2 or L shell, right? Now if the electron from this K shell replaces this, then the spectrum would be K alpha, and if and this is my, let's say n is equals to 3, and if the K beta spectral line is formed, it would be given like this one. This baseline E is equals to 0, represents the neutral atom in its ground state. This would be the ground state, and this E is equals to 20 kilo electron volt is the energy of molybdenum atom with a hole in the K shell. Therefore, when it is full, K alpha lines will be from n is equal to 2, the electron will fill this state, and at 2.7 the hole will be created, and this 2.7 represents a hole in the L shell. Now when the electron from this shell reaches first shell, then the K alpha lines would be formed, and when the electron from the third shell reaches this one, K beta lines would be formed. Now we move to our next section, that is next part, that is ordering of elements. In 1913, British physicist Moseley generated characteristic X-rays for as many elements as he could find. He found 38 by using them as targets for electron bombardment in an evacuated tube of his own design. Moseley then sought out regularities in these spectra as he moved from element to element in the periodic table. In particular, he noted that if for a given spectral line such as K alpha, he plotted for each element the square root of frequency against the position of the element in the periodic table, a straight line resulted. Right? He plotted the under root of frequency against the element position or element position in the periodic table or element number, and he found out that it represented a straight line. Here it was silicon, aluminium, etc., different elements. You can see it in figure 14.17 of the Fundamentals of Physics book by Halliday, Resnick and Walker. Later on, he proved his result that the position of the periodic table is basically under root of frequency. Let's see how. In chapter 39, the energy of the hydrogen atom is given by E sub of n me4 over 8 epsilon naught square h square into 1 by n square, where n represents the shells, and this whole comes out to be equals to minus 13.6 over n square, where n could be 1, 2 or any shell. This is a famous well-known result of energy in any state. Now the nuclear charge in terms of its atomic number can be represented by Z minus 1 into E. This is the nuclear charge seen by an electron, right? Now this formula comes out to be En is into Z minus 1 square, right? Now as electron makes a transition from second to first, or from any higher level to lower level, the change in energy would be delta E would be equals to E2 minus E1. So if I substitute the values over here, minus 13.6 over n would be 2 for E2 into Z minus 1 square minus 13.6 into Z minus 1 square over 1 square. And solving a bit, you will find out that this delta E would result in 10.2 into this would be in electron volt Z minus 1 square. Now when it makes a transition from second to first, it would be a K alpha lines, and the frequency of the K alpha lines would be energy per unit Planck's constant. And when you calculate this comes out to be, by putting the value of delta E and H, this comes out to 2.14 into 10 raised to power 15 Z minus 1 whole square. Now when you take the square root of this equation on both sides, taking square root, under root f would come out to be equals to, this square would be cancelled, this would be 2.46 into 10 raised to power, it would be 4.96 into 10 raised to power 7 Z minus 1. And if you take this as constant, it would be C Z minus C, where C is equals to 4.96 into 10 raised to power 7. So this shows that since this is the equation of a straight line, so we can say that if we plot the under root of frequency against the atomic number, we would get a straight line. This solved many ambiguities that were lying in the periodic table. Now we move to our next section, 40.11, lasers and laser light. In 1960, quantum physics made one of its many contributions to technology, the laser. There are certain properties of laser, like laser light is, first property is laser light is monochromatic. It means that the light originating from laser is not that of like an ordinary bulb which is spread over a continuous range of wavelength. However, in case of laser light, it has a single wavelength and it is not spread. The second important property is that laser light is coherent. It means the laser light can travel large distance, right? And it has it can be it can travel through several hundred kilometers, while that of a bulb the is only 1 meter. Third one is laser light is highly directional. It doesn't deviate from its path, and it doesn't spread as well. Fourth one is that laser light can be sharply focused. Next one is usefulness of lasers or uses of lasers. Lasers are used for voice and data transmission over optical fibers. Lasers can be used for nuclear fusion research and for astronomical and military applications. They can also be used as for reading barcodes, manufacturing and reading compact disc DVDs, performing surgery of many kinds, surveying, cutting, cloth and garment industry, welding, auto bodies and generating holograms. So there are quite a lot of uses of lasers. Now the next thing comes to mind: how does laser works? Our next discussion would be on how laser works. To find out how laser works, we need to consider that if an atom is in ground state, which is given by E naught, and it can move to some excited state by absorbing energy. We call this as Ex. We can make it like, say, if this is the excited state Ex and this is the ground state E naught, and an electron is lying in its ground state and it absorbs a photon. This phenomena would be given as absorption, right? And after this, the electron will move to the excited state Ex after absorbing this photon. Now, if we talk in normal term, this electron wants to stay in its ground state, and it lives in this excited state for about 10 raised to power minus 8 seconds, and then it comes back to this state which is its ground state. Now, considering this one, my electron is in excited state and it comes back to its ground state. That would be known as spontaneous emission, and after this 10 raised to power minus 8 second, the electron would come back to its ground state, but it will release a photon when it comes back to its ground state. This is the normal procedure. However, in case of laser, since laser means light amplification through stimulated emission of radiations, what we do with this electron when it is in excited state, when it was here or when it is over here. Suppose an electron is in excited state and we stimulate it with a photon, then what happens is this is known as stimulated emission. This is known as stimulated emission. Now when the electron comes to its ground state, right, then this photon would be released and the stimulated photon would also be released. Now this extra photon has the energy hf and it is a photon, and this is known as stimulated emission, and this stimulated photon has energy equal to that of photon. The waves associated with these photons have same energy, phase, polarization and direction of travel. And when you have millions of atoms and millions of photons are stimulated in this way, this makes a laser light. This previous discussion took only a single atom with stimulated emission. Suppose now that we have n0 atoms in ground state rather than a single atom, and nx atoms in the excited state. Then the relationship between this excited and ground state atoms is given by Boltzmann, that is nx is equals to n0 e raised to power exponential minus the difference of energies between the excited and the ground state over Boltzmann constant times the temperature. Now normally Ex is greater than E0. It means that number of atoms in the excited state would be less than the number of atoms in the ground state, and situation would look like this one. We have fewer electrons in the excited state and more electrons in the ground state. This is the ground state and this is the excited state. Now by means of, if we increase the temperature due to thermal agitation, some of the electrons from the ground state will move towards the excited state. For the working of laser, we need to make a situation of population inversion. Population inversion means that more photons are emitted than absorbed, right? As these electrons absorb photon to go to excited state and they emit electrons when they come back to this ground state. So if we are making the stimulated photons, then the emission of the stimulated photons, as we see in the example of a single atom, and should be more than that of the photons that are absorbed to make these electrons to go from ground state to excited state. And such a situation in which we have more electrons in the excited state, then the ground state will make it a population inversion or a population inverted state, and this is required for a laser. I hope you have understood this lecture. Thank you for your time. I will be back soon with a new lecture.